Welcome to Fallingwater on behalf of the Western Pennsylvania Conservancy. Fallingwater and its landscape are part of the over 5,000-acre Bear Run Nature Reserve owned by the Conservancy. This region of Western Pennsylvania, known for its rugged terrain, is dominated by the ancient Allegheny Mountains. Bear Run is a swift, pure stream that flows west from its source on Laurel Ridge, tumbling more than 1,400 feet to where it empties into the Youghiogheny River. On this property are native rhododendron and mountain laurel, as well as a wide variety of hardwood trees and wildflowers. Long valued for its natural beauty, it was first used as a summer retreat in the 1890s by a group of Masons who created a Masonic country club here. They later sold the land to the Kaufmann department store of Pittsburgh for use as a vacation camp by the women employees of the store. The camp was active until the 1920s, but gradually fell into disuse. Edgar Kaufmann, who was president of the department store, bought the property from the store and built a small rustic cottage without plumbing or electricity here. But by 1934, Kaufmann and his wife Lillian, both of whom were in their early 50s, decided they wanted more comfort than the rustic cottage could provide. They wanted a house by the waterfall they loved. The choice of Frank Lloyd Wright as the architect for the new weekend house came naturally. Their only child, Edgar Kaufmann Jr., was studying with Wright at his school in Wisconsin known as the Taliesin Fellowship. In 1934, Frank Lloyd Wright was 67 years old. He had an international reputation as one of the leading modern architects of the day, having built several seminal works, including Unity Temple in 1905, the Roby House in 1908, the Imperial Hotel in Tokyo in 1916, and the Hollyhock House in 1918. However, by 1934, Wright was seen by the architectural community as something of an eccentric. No longer in touch with the times, his career was at a standstill, having only built a couple of houses in the previous decade. During a trip to Taliesin to visit their son, Mr. and Mrs. Kaufmann met Frank Lloyd Wright and began what was to be one of history's great artist-patron relationships. Construction on the main house began in the summer of 1936 and was largely complete by late 1937. The Kaufmanns, whose primary residence was in Pittsburgh, used Fallingwater as a weekend retreat until their deaths in the mid-1950s. Their son, Edgar Kaufmann Jr., continued to use it until 1963, when he gave it to the Western Pennsylvania Conservancy in memory of his parents. Fallingwater is one of Frank Lloyd Wright's most widely acclaimed works, and perhaps the best example of his concept of organic architecture. Wright saw buildings as part of an organic whole that begins with the natural site and extends to every aspect of the building, including its furnishings. In his design for Fallingwater, Wright was inspired by the most prominent feature of the site, the waterfall, and took special note of the cantilevered rock ledge over which the water flows, dropping over 30 feet to rocks below. The cantilever was an important theme throughout Wright's work, but most famously expressed at Fallingwater, with its gravity-defying terraces. From here we have our first view of one of Fallingwater's cantilevered terraces, suspended out over the stream with the precipice of the waterfall just beyond. On his first visit to Bear Run in the fall of 1934, Frank Lloyd Wright must have taken note of the old bridge across the stream because he placed this new bridge in the same position as the old one and then aligned the house parallel to it. Approaching the entry to the house, we find 12 trellis beams of reinforced concrete spanning the driveway. They function as a rudimentary porte cochere, announcing one's arrival at the entry, but they also serve to visually tie the house to the rock cliff. Note the two outer beams are larger than the others. This is because they are structural and help to anchor the second floor of Fallingwater to the cliff behind it. Two of the beams curve around tree trunks, seemingly pulling nature into the house. The entrance to Fallingwater is somewhat hidden, a dark recess slipped between two masses of stone. To the left of the entrance are steps that lead down to a rectangular plunge pool. A flight of hanging stairs lead up to the second-level guest room terrace, the only covered terrace in the house. On the right is a shallow pool with a spout of water, which often held freshly cut flowers until they could be arranged and placed throughout the house. But it was also used by the family for washing their hands and feet after a day of hiking in the woods. At Fallingwater, water is ever present. It is the symbolic thread that illuminates the house. We enter from the corner of the room and view it on a diagonal. This makes the living room appear much larger than it actually is and gives a dynamic quality to the space. Unlike traditional domestic architecture at the time, with its spaces divided into rooms, each with a specific function, Wright opened up the living space in his houses to provide a sense of freedom and movement that inspired architects the world over and became an important feature of modernism. He called it breaking the box. Here at Fallingwater, the living room is an open, common area defined by a square central ceiling indentation with a muslin-covered wood frame that conceals indirect fluorescent tube lighting. From this central area, the music area, study area, conversation areas, and dining space unfold, all adjacent, not separate, yet functionally defined. The music area is located near the entrance. The built-in desk and bookshelves define the study space. Along the southern part of the room are bands of windows and built-in seating, cantilevered from the walls, forming conversation areas. Behind the seating is built-in indirect lighting. Not unusual today, but in 1936, revolutionary. By building in the furniture, rather than placing it away from the walls, as is more usual, the central space is freed up and seems much larger and more open. This steel-framed, glass-enclosed hatch, called a hatch because it resembles a ship's hatch, covers the stairs that lead down to Bear Run. The hatch's glass covering can be slid back to be fully concealed beneath the planter, opening the house to the sounds and beauty of the stream. When opened, the Kaufmanns found the hatch also functioned as a welcome source of ventilation on hot summer days. As the house steps down the hillside, it is this stairway that serves as the final visual device which marries the house to its setting. At Fallingwater, Wright employed only 4 primary building materials, all honestly expressed according to their nature. First is the reinforced concrete with its rounded edges, all of which is painted a pale ochre or apricot color to suggest the nature of the concrete as a product of the earth. The rounded edges reference its plastic or malleable qualities. Next is the stone, a Pottsville sandstone that is extremely hard. It was all quarried here on the site just a few hundred feet downstream by local, mostly untrained, craftsmen working under the supervision of a master stonemason. Notice how it was laid up in a rough, uneven way to suggest the natural horizontal strata of the rock formations on the site. It also provides a rich contrast to the smooth surfaces of the reinforced concrete. Then there is the 1/4-inch thick plate glass produced by Pittsburgh Plate Glass. Note how the glass is mitered at the corners, making the corners disappear. This was a device that Wright used to open the house to nature and blur the separation between the inside and out. Last is the steel used for the window framing and shelving, all of which is painted a Cherokee red color, which Wright explained referenced the nature of steel as a product of iron ore and formed in fire. The house was designed as 3 reinforced concrete trays with upturned edges that make up the 3 floors of the house. They are stacked one upon the other and separated by stone piers. The 3 floors step back and up the hillside behind the house, following the contour of the slope. The concrete tray of the main floor is cantilevered or suspended out over the waterfall, in a way not unlike the way a diving board is suspended. The cantilevered spaces, which are mainly to the south, are counterbalanced both by the massive masonry walls and the rooms on the 2nd and 3rd floors, all of which are located on the northern side of the house, opposite the cantilevered spaces. Out on the terrace, we are suspended out and over the waterfall. Perhaps the most dramatic of Fallingwater's cantilevered spaces. Looking back, we can see the boulder to which the great stone chimney mass is anchored. The chimney contains flues for 4 fireplaces and the oil-fired boiler. Like the trunk of a tree, the various floors of the house spread out from it. To the left of the chimney is a 3-story window. It begins in the small basement and rises past the kitchen on the 1st level, a bedroom on the 2nd, and a study on the top floor. Returning inside on the 1st floor, we see the natural boulder appearing to erupt out of the waxed flagstone floors to form the hearth of the massive open fireplace. This is the heart of the house and the focal point of the room. Since prehistoric times, the fire has been at the center of family life, and clearly the prominence of fireplaces in Wright's designs refers to this ancient tradition. The round Cherokee red cast iron kettle has a capacity of 18 gallons and can be pulled over the fire to warm mulled wine. All of the furniture in the house, with the exception of the freestanding chairs, was designed by Frank Lloyd Wright and constructed of North Carolina walnut veneer over ship's quality plywood to withstand the humid conditions. Foam rubber, a new material at the time, was also used and is, for the most part, original. The upholstery fabrics were chosen by the Kaufmanns to fit Wright's color scheme for the furnishings, a simple palette of red, gold, and beige. The art objects and textiles at Fallingwater were collected by the Kaufmanns and selected for their use here in a more informal setting than their home in Pittsburgh. Fallingwater is unique in that it is the only major Wright design building with its furniture, original art collection, and setting intact. To the right of the hearth is the kitchen. Glancing inside is the kitchen table designed by Wright. An original Mixmaster mixer resides on the shelf in front of the window. The cabinets are steel and were produced by St. Charles. We also see their last refrigerator from the 1950s. Note the Swedish Aga coal-burning stove. It's not the original, it's a replacement. The Kaufmann's cook found it generated so much heat that it made the kitchen unbearable in the summer, and so had it removed. The large fan over the doorway was needed to help cool the space. Back in the living room, we see to the right of the kitchen door a built-in walnut buffet. Its front sections included 2 drop-leaf tables which could be pulled away from the buffet, the leaves lifted, and their gate legs extended. It was then connected to the end of the dining table, expanding the dining table to midway into the living room and seating up to 20 people. Although Wright designed barrel chairs for the dining table, the Kaufmanns preferred these traditional 3-legged 18th century Italian country chairs. The tour now leaves the first floor and we begin our look at the Kaufmann family's individual living quarters. Fallingwater is on the one hand a dynamic and forceful open space. But in the hallways, one senses the cave-like and protective quality of shelter. There are 2 original Audubon hand-colored engravings in this hallway. The rectangular cutout in the wall conceals a radiator. And a Latin American Madonna and Child guards the top of the stairs. You're now in the guest room on the 2nd level of the house. The bedrooms at Fallingwater are intimate, individual spaces containing a bed, wardrobe, chair, and desk. Each bedroom has its own bath and private terrace, and each has its own character. At its lowest, the ceiling is 6 feet 4.5 inches high, accentuating the sheltering human scale of Wright's architecture. Original wood-slatted Venetian blinds on the windows offer privacy for the guests who may have found a house without blinds or curtains uncomfortable. Headboards for the beds are permanently built into the east walls so the light from the rising morning sun would not awake you. This room originally had 2 single beds fitting its headboard. However, one was removed when the house was opened to the public. Above the headboard is a framed crayon drawing of a peasant man by the Mexican artist Diego Rivera, who along with his wife, Frida Kahlo, were friends of the Kaufmanns. The incandescent lamp beside the bed was designed by Wright. The stylish chrome water pitchers are found on bedside tables throughout the house. Note also the built-in desk with louvers in the back that conceal the radiators. The master bedroom is the largest bedroom in the house, located just above the living room. The drop in the ceiling level draws your eye outward. Called a fold, it is actually a reinforced concrete beam which runs the length of this section of the house, strengthening the floor above you. Each of Fallingwater's bedrooms, except the guest bedroom, has a fireplace. Here, notice the long horizontal mantel and the 2 large stones below it that play upon the theme of ledge and cantilever. In the niche is a late Gothic wood carving of the Madonna and Child from the French province of Burgundy. On the cantilevered corner desk is a stunning art glass lamp from the studio of Louis Comfort Tiffany. Beside the lamp is a photograph of Edgar Kaufmann Sr., enjoying one of his favorite sports, fishing. To the left of the door is a Japanese woodblock print by Hiroshige, one of 5 prints given by Frank Lloyd Wright to the Kaufmanns. A signed Picasso etching, The Smoker, is to the left of the bed. The walnut wardrobes in all of the bedrooms are wall-hung units with no support from beneath. Their lightly colored sap streaks emphasize the horizontal nature of the units. The master terrace is the largest in the house. It is dramatically balanced over the waterfall at right angles to the first level. Edgar Kaufmann Sr. used this room as his dressing room and study. Where the master bedroom was filled with the light of its terrace, here, dark stone walls are contrasted by a transparent wall of glass and steel, the middle section of the 3-story window. Here, the glass is caulked directly into the stone, causing the interior stone wall to continue uninterrupted past the window to become the exterior wall, in a continuity of material and surface that once again blurs the separation between the inside and out. Another remarkable feature of this window is the way in which the corner windows open, eliminating the corner altogether. Wright explained, "My sense of the wall was no longer the side of a box, it was the enclosure of space, affording protection against the storm or heat only when needed." Because Wright wanted the tall window to open, he had a quarter circle cut through the desk, a small detail of great impact. The stone bust you see on the desk is of Edgar Kaufmann Jr., sculpted by the African-American artist Richmond Barthé. The Japanese print over the headboard is by Hiroshige. and the one on the wall by the exit door is by Hokusai. Located a few feet up from his bedroom, Edgar Kaufmann Sr. used this as his private terrace. It has wonderful vistas looking down on the master bedroom and living room terraces, as well as the canopy-covered walkway leading up the hillside to the guest house. The limestone sculpture is one of 3 at Fallingwater by the early 20th century Mexican sculptor Magaña. Notice the deliberate stepping of the concrete staircase going to the 3rd floor. In an interview with Hugh Downs, Wright explained a source for the design of Fallingwater. Mr. Kaufmann loved the site where the house was built and liked to listen to the waterfall. I think you can hear the waterfall when you look at the design. Edgar Kaufmann Jr. occupied the entire 3rd level, set back on the northern side of the house at the very top. This arrangement helps to counterbalance the projecting cantilevers of the 2 levels below. Located just above his father's room, this room was originally designed to be Edgar Kaufmann Jr.'s bedroom, but was converted to a study after he moved his bed to the sun-filled alcove at the end of the hallway. Over the study fireplace is a 40-inch slab of sandstone, naturally red from its high iron oxide content, that was found during the quarrying of the stone. Edgar Kaufmann Jr. designed the bookshelves on the 2 walls of this room and is pictured flanked by his parents in the photograph on the bottom shelf. Kaufmann was a curator of design at the Museum of Modern Art in New York and initiated the museum's Good Design program. He was also a Wright Scholar and later became an adjunct professor of architecture and art history at Columbia University. He thought of design not as a frill, but as an essential part of everyday life. After his parents died in the 1950s, he continued to use Fallingwater until 1963 and visited frequently until his death in 1989 at age 79. Out on the terrace, you will notice how Wright uses contrasting elements to create movement across a horizontal plane. On one side is the great stone chimney mass. It contrasts with the low and horizontally articulated patterning of the glass doors and windows of Edgar Kaufmann Jr.'s sleeping alcove. By raising this element, Wright was able to provide clear-story windows to both light and ventilate the otherwise interior bathroom. The enclosed bridge you are seeing now links the main house to the hillside, passing over the driveway below. Soft, natural sunlight is provided through 5 ceiling skylights equipped with bulbs for illumination at night. Here, the native stone protrudes into the far end of the passageway. Note the discolored stone marking the path where groundwater drains through the building into a trough surrounding the base of the rock. That, in turn, drains onto the driveway below. On the boulder is an Indian stone bust of Parvati, the Hindu goddess of love, dating to about the year 750 AD. The painting on the wall, entitled Sleeping Child, is by Diego Rivera. At the door, notice the circular stone moss garden growing half on the inside and half on the out. It beckons you to come outdoors. The bridge opens to a great curved walk leading up the hillside to the guest wing. The concrete canopy above the walkway is reinforced by steel rods woven in tension to form the kind of structure Wright likened to a spider's web. Every essential element of the house is included in the canopy. It is cantilevered broadly. The slab is folded for strength and continuity, and it cascades down the hill. It also shelters you from the weather and frames the landscape. The guest house and service wing were completed in 1939. Once again, notice how Wright has used the cantilever and horizontal line to create a comfortable, relaxed retreat. The entry is defined by an open walnut screen. Here, professional stonemasons laid the stone in a smoother, more even patterning than that of the main house. A corner fireplace with a raised hearth is formed of broad stones. Entering the guest sitting room, we see a band of windows. They provide light and ventilation to this space, which is built into the hillside. For extra sleeping space, the built-in sofa was designed 3 feet wide. On the walls, you will see 2 Japanese prints by Hiroshige and a Picasso lithograph of the artist and his model. Cantilevered walnut shelves join the wardrobe to create a long horizontal line which unites the sitting room to the large bedroom beyond. Above the bed is a large landscape entitled The Valley of Mexico. It depicts the famous twin volcanoes south of Mexico City and is by Jose Velasco, a teacher of Diego Rivera. The swimming pool stretches 31 feet along the hill and is 6 feet deep throughout. Cantilevered stone slabs form steps leading down for a gradual entry into the pool. At the far end of the pool is a sculpture by the American ceramic artist Peter Volkos. The design and construction of Fallingwater is both a testament to the genius of the architect and the foresight of his client. The original budget for the house was $40,000. However, the final cost came in at $155,000, which included the built-in furnishings and the architect's fee of $8,000. This was at a time when a 4-bedroom brick house cost approximately $4,000. Despite rising costs and engineering reports which questioned the structural stability of the house, Edgar Kaufmann Sr. doggedly pursued its completion. He must have sensed that Frank Lloyd Wright had created a great masterpiece. In this, he was right. Fallingwater drew immediate attention from the media, and at age 67 revitalized Wright's career. He went on to design over 200 buildings and residences. Frank Lloyd Wright was nearly 92 years old and still designing when he died in 1959. We hope you have enjoyed your video tour of Fallingwater, and we urge you to visit Fallingwater soon. Spend the day here in this beautiful natural place, which refreshed the Kaufmann family and so inspired Frank Lloyd Wright. Discussing that inspiration, Wright said, "The land is the simplest form of architecture. Building upon the land is as natural to man as to other animals, birds, and insects." At Fallingwater, Wright created a powerful structural statement that symbolized the integration of man with nature.